Hello and welcome to the NDTV Dialogues. Today I am privileged to have as our guest a very special individual, the former President of India, one of our most senior and distinguished political leaders, someone who has a ringside view, in fact been a key participant in the political events of almost half a century of political life. Shri Pranab Mukherjee, thank you very much for joining NDTV and being on the program.
Thank you.
Sir, you are now Citizen Mukherjee, as you call yourself. As a citizen of this great republic, what do you think of the current political landscape as someone who is uniquely qualified to give his views on what the current political shaping of India is?
As a citizen of this great country, without having any political designation, I am enjoying the unfolding drama in vast landscape of this great country. For the first time in last almost 50 years, precisely 48 years, I am neither a member of parliament nor member of a political party. As a citizen, I have the unique position to look into, to observe, to reflect, and assimilate in my own mind how things are developing. As I developed a detachment from day to day partisan approach, not political, but partisan approach, I developed some sort of objectivity to analyze the things, to absorb within myself, internalize it rather.
Could you share with us, sir, some of the larger shifts in political landscape? Some of them occurred, of course, when you were president, but looking ahead now at 2017, when there almost seems to be a churn for central position. Who is the defining feature? Which party, which ideology is the defining feature of Indian polity today? In 2017, do you think the BJP is now what the Congress was many years ago in terms of they define the agenda, they set the agenda, and other political parties around it are just trying to play catch up in a sense?
No doubt BJP has emerged as an important political party, and as ruling party they had the advantage of setting agenda on which parties and persons respond and react. But Congress has not lost its relevance. The agenda which you are having today is essentially the inclusive India, which was set by Congress precisely by the UPA government led by Congress, Dr. Manmohan Singh. Inclusive development. In the story of development, we have seen various phases. Initial days, it was to create capital. Country was capital starved. Thereafter, through planned economic development over the years, we emphasized on certain aspects at different phases. But one big improvement has taken place since Dr. Manmohan Singh removed the stranglehold of Indian economy by liberalizing it, reforming various policy framework in 1991. That has set the agenda that is broadly called reforms, which is being followed and pursued by all other political parties.
But interestingly, sir, the BJP under Prime Minister Modi has identified the term or the focus to be a Congress Mukt Bharat. And when we talk about the changing political landscape of India, we see the BJP again under Prime Minister Modi, now in states where we would never have dreamt of the BJP being able to unleash the Congress stranglehold earlier, whether it's in the Northeast, whether it's the BJP as number 2 in your state, West Bengal, even whether trying to now make inroads into Kerala and the South. So, do you think a Congress Mukt Bharat can be a reality at all?
Firstly, I do not subscribe to this philosophy that in a multi-party democratic system, we can get rid of any political party. Every political party has come to stay, play its role, depending on their acceptability of their philosophy, ideology to the people of this country. Therefore, as a political thesis, I think it is not very correct. But again, it is not my observation as a congressman,
Yes.
which I was. I cannot claim myself to be so because there was a gap. But this is I am analyzing as a student of history and politics. Sometimes some political parties, in terms of electoral battle, may be on the top, sometimes they may be at the bottom. Who could imagine that a party which got only 2 seats in Lok Sabha in 1984 could form government in 1996 within 12 years with 180 being supported by others. Therefore, looking at a particular point of time and to make a judgment in the perspective of that time frame perhaps is not correct.
You've, of course, sir, at your book launch and in your book as well, you made references to occasions when there were rumors or thoughts that perhaps you could be the Prime Minister of India, and many have described you as the best Prime Minister India never had. And in fact, I'll quote from what the ex-Prime Minister Manmohan Singh said at your book launch, that you were better qualified to be Prime Minister, but he had no choice in the matter. Now that's interesting, because why is it that to such senior leaders like both of you, why was there perhaps not a more democratic decision on who should be Prime Minister once the Congress coalition was taking power? Why was it left to just one person to make this decision?
You know the history of how the government formation took place in 2004. It is true, we shot vote in the name of Sonia Gandhi, the then Congress President. She toured all over the country, addressed innumerable meetings. People expressed their confidence in her, and Congress got largest number of seats. Not exactly majority, but largest number of seats, about 147. She was unanimously elected leader of the Congress party in the meeting of the elected members of Congress parliamentarians. She was also elected as the leader of the UPA, other political parties, RJD, DMK, TRS, Jharkhand Mukti Morcha, NCP, etc., who formed the coalition. But later on she decided not to have the office of the Prime Minister. And thereafter the Congress parliamentary party gave the responsibility of choosing the leader. And I think, and I have made this comment several times, that she chose the right person. Dr. Manmohan Singh was the right person to be chosen to lead the country at that point of time. And serving under him for long 8 years, he continued to be the Prime Minister for 10 years. I can say with confidence that he provided the right leadership to the nation as Prime Minister. So far I am concerned, I have stated it on number of times that I have received much more from the people of this country than I have given to them. So I am content with what I have received. I served this country as the minister in the union government for 22 years. I had the rare privilege of being the leader of both the houses. Rajya Sabha from 1980 to 85, Lok Sabha from 2004 to 2012 till I resigned from the ministerships. I served the Congress party, being member of its highest policy making body, working committee, from 1978 with a gap in between for several years, till 2012. What else one can expect? Therefore, I got much more, and I am quite satisfied and content with that what I have received.
Listening really, sir, to that record and the number of prime ministers you worked with since Indira Gandhi, tell us in your perspective, who do you think, in the various prime ministers you've worked with, you've seen as an opposition leader, who do you think are the prime ministers that have really stood out for you in terms of their contribution, in terms of their unique abilities?
No, I have not served with all prime ministers. I have served with mainly Indira Gandhi, P.V. Narasimha Rao, Dr. Manmohan Singh. Of course, I served under Rajiv Gandhi for 2 months, November, December, from 31st October 1984 to 31st December 1984, 2 months. But Indira Gandhi 9 years, as junior minister from 73 to 77, and full cabinet ministers from 1980 till her assassination. No doubt to me she was the best, and not only to me, even the various surveys which we found, even after her death, 30 years after her death, many of the Indians consider her as the best they had as Prime Minister. But each and every Prime Minister with whom I had the privilege of working have made stellar contribution to the country. Take the example of Mr. P.V. Narasimha Rao. I jokingly, not so jokingly, but in the form map here as with a little light-heartedness, that he made it an art of indecision. Not to take decision is a decision. That does not mean he was indecisive. He was very much decisive. But sometimes he did not take decisions to avoid contradictions or to avoid controversies. Or he found that not to take decision is the correct in that situation. Therefore, P.V. Narasimha Rao, Dr. Manmohan Singh was a textbook Prime Minister. He gave liberty to his cabinet ministers to the fullest extent possible. Always took decisions which emerged out of consensus, which emerged after discussion as the decision, either in the cabinet or sometimes political decisions in the Congress Working Committee. These are of course I worked with Rajiv Gandhi, but I watched his performance. He was harbinger of the reforms. He dreamt of India of 21st century. And the technological revolution which I find today in India is largely his contribution, particularly in mobile and telecommunication. Therefore, each and every Prime Minister has made its own contribution. Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee, he has a unique stellar contribution as Prime Minister for 6 years. Embodiment of courtesy. I have mentioned certain facts in my book. Not only he was an excellent orator, could carry the house with him, but his administrative decisions steely determination sometimes reminded the actions taken by Mrs. Indira Gandhi. Therefore, every Prime Minister has his own contribution.
What has struck you about Prime Minister Modi? What do you think
He
of
has
him?
the unique capacity to work very hard with a strong determination to achieve his objectives. This one characteristic I find in him. Secondly, he is clear in his vision, what he wants to achieve, and he works hard to achieve that. This one should remember, it was not easy for him. Coming straight from the state, not even serving the parliament even for as member for few years, but he grasped the intricacies of the administration, internal dynamics of Indian politics, foreign policies, relationships with the neighbors. I will just mention one example because I cannot narrate the relationship, conversations, discussions, engagements between Prime Minister and President. It is so privileged that even the court has no right to have any access. But one example I will give to you, when he decided and suggested to me, rather I had to approve it because he was yet to be Prime Minister, that at the time of taking oath he would like to invite the heads of government of the SAARC states. This was a unique suggestion, and readily I agreed, and we had the presence of Prime Ministers of SAARC countries or the representatives if the Prime Minister could not come. For example, Bangladesh Prime Minister could not come. She was away on tour to some other countries.
Pakistan.
But her representative speaker, all others came.
That's very interesting. And of course, sir, as you said, you were a lifelong congressman, no longer member of any political party. But now we have elections coming again for the post of party president. Critics would say the BJP has said elections in the Congress party are by name. It is an assumption that Rahul Gandhi will be the next president of the Congress party. Do you think that is a drawback in party democracy, that it's assumed that a Gandhi or Rahul Gandhi is the only choice to be party president?
First of all, whether Rahul Gandhi will be president or not, it will be chosen by the congressmen as per the Congress constitution. And this constitution is pretty old. Delegates of the Indian National Congress elect the Congress president. Therefore, how they will exercise, that is of course the internal matter. How CPIM holds election, it is the internal mechanism and constitution of the that party. Same is the story with BJP. Each party has its own rules, systems, way of functioning. And we shall always have to keep in mind when we evaluate Indian National Congress, that Indian National Congress, a 132-year-old party, has the tremendous capacity to learn, to adjust, to adopt, and always to rejuvenate itself. If somebody goes through the history of Indian National Congress, 1885 to 1900, 1900 to 1916, after Gandhi arrives on the scene, from then till his death, then these instances will be proved by facts. Therefore, before sitting on judgment of the internal functioning of a political party, we shall have to be little careful. If the Congress delegates who has been elected if they have decided to choose a particular person, who are the others to say, who are not the part of that system, to make a comment on it?
So, do you feel, sir, that the Gandhis are an integral part of the glue that holds the Congress party together? Because in a sense, you've seen all of them over the years. You've mentioned in your book what Sonia Gandhi has a unique ability of detachment. Do you think Rahul Gandhi is now ready to take on this job? And what do you feel in your many interactions with him over the years?
No, I have various interactions with every leader, contemporary leader. I worked with her grandmother. Of course, I did never work with Nehruji. I was just a teacher when he died in 1964. I was teaching in a college. Same is the story with Lal Bahadur. Morarji Bhai also, I just saw him as Prime Minister when I was sitting in the opposition bench, and I had interaction in that capacity, like other Prime Ministers. But what I want to point out that these young men has the capacity, what I qualified, to respond, to change, to adapt, to adjust, which is the qualification of a leader. And leadership is always thrown out of circumstances, situations prevail at that point of time. And how one responds to that situation determines the quality of the leadership. Leader is not made. Indira Gandhi was not made by anybody, like Madame Tussauds image of wax. Circumstances through her leadership. Similarly, circumstances through the leadership of Rajiv Gandhi, I am not talking of 1984, but after the Tamilian problems became serious in Sri Lanka, unique leadership he provided. Leadership which he provided for disarmament in the United Nations, in the disarmament conference, he emerged as the leader of the third world. So circumstances, situations throw up the leaders.
But have the polls, Indian elections, almost become more presidential in a sense, that people vote for a central figure? In fact, so as I asked, do you think it will be a Prime Minister Narendra Modi versus Rahul Gandhi battle in 2019?
I am not talking of individuals, but always from 1952, so far Congress party is concerned, they have always thrown the leaders. As a young boy, I remember the first poster Indian National Congress brought out for the election of 1952. I am talking of Bengal, I was living there. Face of Jawaharlal Nehru. Promise of implementing first 5-year plan, which talked of farmers, irrigation, industrialization, solution of unemployment problems. So, first, second, third with Nehru's face. Fourth election, Congress could not provide a face before emergence of Indira Gandhi. Congress came down from 362 to 282.
Interestingly, sir, we also talk at a time when the Prime Minister is very keen. You also mentioned on simultaneous elections. You just mentioned the challenges of having the Lok Sabha elections in India with 543 Lok Sabha constituencies, 7 lakh polling booths. Do you feel that simultaneous elections are feasible? Are they welcome in a country like India? Some have worried, Mamata Banerjee says it will undermine democracy. Others says this moving into a presidential system. Do you favor simultaneous elections?
It's not a question of my favoring or not. It's a question of the probability. How do you do it? What is the scheme of the parliamentary system? That the government must have the working majority in the legislature. Lok Sabha in case of federal government, state assemblies in case of state governments. If that majority is lost, what are you going to do? In the state for 1 year you can have president's rule. But what about center? There is no president's rule. Therefore, you will have to go for premature elections if the clear mandate in the House in favor of a government is not available. There may be coalition governments. 10 years Dr. Manmohan Singh led the coalition governments. Vajpayee ji led 6 years the coalition government. But at the same time, Mr. Devegowda or Mr. Inder Kumar Gujral could not lead, or Vishwanath Pratap Singh, or Morarji Bhai. Therefore, stories are there from both sides. So, question is, how do you guarantee that there will be a workable majority for a government by the verdict of the people, because here the government is formed by the people through the election, general election.
So that
it
is
may be desirable, but how it will be possible, achievable, it is to be thought of. In some cases it may be that there would be long spell of presidential rules in the states if center has a clear majority, either by single party majority, government has a clear majority in the House, either by coalition or by single party majority. But it is to be ensured that the same thing happened in the state. How do you ensure it?
Interesting.
Because even in the same elections we have seen, people are voting in different ways in Lok Sabha and in Assembly.
No, it's an interesting aspects you've raised. There's some interesting constitutional aspects as well. But when you look, just looking back, sir, also at some of the presidential years, one interesting point which had come up, one of the rare situations when the court had actually overturned a ruling was the decision in Arunachal Pradesh. Is there anything you would like to say now, or what you thought when that Supreme Court decision came overruling what actually happened in Arunachal Pradesh?
Supreme Court has the authority to interpret the Constitution. They interpreted the Constitution in the way they found it is necessary. So therefore, there were certain mistakes and Supreme Court has pointed out. I cannot make any comments on it, because Supreme Court has exercised his constitutional jurisdiction.
Did you at that time have any second thoughts, sir, when it was presented to you?
It cannot be shared with anybody, as I told you.
Other interesting aspects, and now as a citizen, let me ask you, sir, as somebody who's been a finance minister, as someone who's been, it was a decision of your government in a sense as you were president, but looking now at the impact of demonetization today on the common person and the issue of joblessness. Demonetization, as Prime Minister Modi said, was first suggested in a way by Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. Do you think demonetization will be good for the Indian economy? And how do you look at the whole issue of jobs, which is currently a key issue?
One thing is to be kept in mind: when a decision is being taken, there is an intent. Even when a law is being made, there is an intent. And there is another aspect: how do you implement that intent? One of the objectives of demonetization was to immobilize the black money. Intent may be correct, but how to implement it? If it is not properly implemented, then it may not give the desired results. Secondly, some of the economic decisions have its impact not immediately felt, but it is felt later on. While commenting on it, Dr. Manmohan Singh made a significant observation that impact of demonetization would be slow growth. Some economists considered that it would be slow growth immediately, but later on it will improve. Now, what would happen? After all, we have to keep in mind that economics is not the physical science. Laws of economics are not as fixed results are as determined in the way the physical science laws are determined. So therefore, how the economic actions will have its impact on the people and how they will respond it is yet to be seen.
Some political observers say that often the Indian public is stuck between a rock and a hard place, between two seas: corruption that has come to be associated with the Congress party and communalism that has come to be associated with the BJP. Would you agree with that view, sir? And why do you think the Congress is now associated with corruption? And what do you feel about the BJP and communalism?
Both these things are, you cannot fix any political party with a particular epithet. It is wrong. Congress has fought against corruptions. Ask any congressman, he will give large number of examples, events, incidents, laws, economic actions. Not only congressmen, these are the facts on history, what has happened.
But 2014 may have been influenced by the perception of corruption.
No, perceptions and actuality, there is a difference. Facts remain that in the later phase, it appeared that government's decision-making process has been stagnant. This was an impression. Many of the decisions could not be implemented effectively because of the compulsions of coalition. Coalition government has some infirmities, some disadvantage. It is one such that Prime Minister is not the master of the whole situation. As in a single party government, it provides that opportunity to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister starts with a weakness in choosing the ministers. In coalition government, leader of the coalition, that is Prime Minister, is not authorized to choose the ministers from other political parties. Therefore, these are the difficulties that are there. But shortly what I say, that it is difficult and it is not correct to brand a particular political party as corrupt or associated with corruption or associated with communalism.
Even though the Congress has long done that and associating the BJP, the Congress has long done that as associating the BJP as communal. You don't agree with that?
It is for not a political party to decide about the other political party. It is for the people to decide about all political parties. I am talking of the people's perception.
One interesting aspect you said in the book, sir, when the Shankaracharya was arrested, and you were very upset with it by saying that this cannot be the tenets of secularism to be used only against Hindus, seers and saints. Would a Muslim cleric have been arrested during Eid time?
No, what I said actually, when this thing was reported, one wrong thing I think it has been, I will correct it in the next edition, that it is not that I decided, cabinet decided that government of Tamil Nadu will be advised not to oppose the bail. The issue came when he was arrested in connection with a murder case that is a local matter. It was at the time of Diwali. So I asked, and everybody was saying that no, it is a correct decision. Not everybody, quite a large number of members present. So I angrily told them that what do you mean by it? Do you have the courage to arrest a local imam of a mosque in the month of Ramjan? Don't sectionalize the secularism. Don't brand it with a particular community, with a particular event. At the time of Diwali, when the country is in the mood of celebrations, an important religious leader, he has a large following. It was Kanchipuram Shankaracharya.
Yes, that was an interesting insight because the Congress, and this was used by the BJP very effectively, had been accused of pandering to minority vote bank politics.
Other political parties, non-Congress political parties, bring this allegation that we are making the vote bank politics. Congress is making the vote bank politics. That is, political parties will have their own way of expression. I have no comment on it.
Finally, sir, as we come to the end, as president, you made very important speeches when you lectured around the country, when you spoke at key moments, stressing on the unity and diversity of India, stressing on tolerance, stressing on the kind of patriotism we should see. Why did you find it so important to make these speeches? Was there a message, perhaps, also to the current time? Why did
I
you feel
wanted to convey the message when I found that in various incidents of intolerance are appearing in the media. When I found that people of a particular religion are being lynched, I went to the extent that this is a time for all of us to reflect what has happened to us. Therefore, we shall have to keep in mind that core value of Indian civilization is tolerance. Indians may be argumentative, but Indians cannot be intolerant. Core value of Indian civilization, which has the lasting effect for more than 5,000 years, is tolerance, acceptance of diversity. And what is India today? If we shut our eyes and see the map of imagine the map of India from Mizoram to Dwarka, Badrinath, Kedarnath to Cape Comorin. This vast landmass having 1.3 billion people using more than 100 languages and dialects in their everyday life, practicing 7 religions, having different costumes, food habit, way of life, yet living under one constitution, in one system, one flag. How is it possible? It is because of acceptance of this huge diversity. And this is based on tolerance. And it will be fragmented if we indulge in intolerance. That's why I was repeatedly saying that we may be argumentative, but we cannot be intolerant.
But was that message to the people of India, sir, to the politicians of India? Because often it's the politicians who are fanning these flames of intolerance.
You know, once the people decides, politicians are to follow their dictums.
Do you feel, sir, that the Nehruvian idea, we know that Pandit Nehru now, his whole contribution to India seeks to be rewritten in a sense or obliterated, that Pandit Nehru's vision or an idea of India has now changed, perhaps looking at the Prime Minister Modi's vision of a new India? What do you think is your vision of India of 2017?
The vision of India cannot be given by individuals. As I was telling you about the core values of Indian civilization, India has its vision much larger than individuals' opinion. Various individuals, several times, Rabindranath, Mahatma Gandhi, Swami Vivekananda, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, and many others, Sri Aurobindo, Tilak, they have visualized. They have tried to find out the visions of India. Therefore, various individuals, various thinkers, they have their own ideas about India, nothing wrong in it.
Right. Mr. Mukherjee, thank you so much for speaking to NDTV. It's been a privilege speaking to you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.